what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by Paul Hall, Arwin, and I don't know if 10th man's there. I can never tell because he's got a black box. We're also joined by a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome, one and all.
Welcome back.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Yes.
Hello.
Hey, good morning. Welcome back.
It's good to be back.
Thank you. First and foremost, a massive shout out to everyone who supported me on PayPal and Patreon. Not Patreon, GoFundMe. Although Patreon as well, absolutely. A lot of the people who supported me were from Patreon, or Patreons, I should say. Brilliant, really, really brilliant. I've been able to pay for a shed load of things to be fixed, sorted, and leaving me in a position where I've got a working computer sat next to me, and the show is running live. So I am absolutely elated. I've been chewing my thumbs off for the last week with withdrawal from No Flat Earth Debate. I don't know if anyone else is the same.
Yep, same here.
Yeah, a little. But then
A
again,
little.
it was good to see the shows back. You picked a couple of really good ones, and it was very enjoyable to just watch them again.
Yeah, I took my time. Obviously, I had plenty of time on my hands, so I went through some of the members-only videos, and I was like, which ones are going to be actually good to keep people engaged? And I just picked out what I thought were the best ones and rebroadcast them over the last week. So there was stuff out there. Typically, I was really busy trying to fix things and do things and run around like a headless chicken anyway, so I wasn't actually in a lot of the live chats. Well, I did occasionally. So there we go. Who's that that's super chatted? Let's have a little look. Oh no, where's my main page gone?
Michael Jones.
Thank you, Michael Jones, for the super sticker. Can't quite see from this distance what it is.
It's a Bravo Fox.
Bravo Fox. Okay. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat. Really do appreciate your support. Let's do some housekeeping. Unless anyone objects.
Man, everything's become so dirty. Like 1 week not housekeeping. Oh my god, it's all a mess. Glover suddenly believe they've won. And all that.
Hang up. We're going to do housekeeping. We're going to need to pull out the vacuum.
All right.
Right, let's do it. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon formerly known as Earth curve?
Not this Friday, and not since last Friday.
Yeah. It's still word soup.
You're a bit quiet, Arwin. I don't know if you can get a bit...
Oh.
Maybe
I said it's still just word soup.
Word soup, yeah. Shout soundly. Oh, another super chat. Let's just shout this out. Hold on 1 second. Shout out to Rob Wiggles. He says, welcome back. Thank you very much indeed. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Yep. No Coriolis for these guys.
Yeah, the myth of terrestrial Coriolis.
Well, there is Coriolis, as demonstrated by the roundabout and other things that people can do, and it's easy to prove, but they can't do it with the Earth. So
Right.
it only means one thing, right, Arwin?
Yeah, there's no terrestrial Coriolis effect. Everything moves in lockstep with the Earth, even though none of it really makes any sense. Despite that it does, there are still people out there in the high priesthood that claim that you still have Coriolis effect, despite everything moving in lockstep with the supposed rotation. And that makes no damn sense.
So when you say lockstep, you're saying their position, correct?
Yes. Yeah, but
Okay.
nobody on the baller side claimed that the air is actually moving over the Earth, because they always started out defaulting that that's not happening.
Well, this is how silly it
not.
gets. When you have one lie, you have to come up with another lie, which is the air, the atmosphere, begging the question, is moving lockstep with the Earth. Well, everyone knows you got 4 different directions plus in between directions of wind. So that's another stupid statement, just like the first one, because there is no earth-based Coriolis. So one lie makes the other one look even worse.
All right.
Yeah. Well put. Any evidence of the distance to the sun? Hey, Chocolate.
No distance.
It's over
Hey,
there.
Choco.
Yo. So
Hey,
Hello.
Chocolate.
morning.
It's interesting,
Welcome back.
Chocolate. It's interesting. You come in right when Arwen comes in, when the sun question comes up, but you came in this time.
Did I really? Awesome.
Like that.
What's up, bro? What's up, Nathan? How you doing over there, brother?
I'm very happy to be sat where I'm sat with a microphone in front of me, asking questions about scientific evidence of gravity and things of that nature. Speaking of which, any scientific evidence of gravity?
No, it's
Nah.
a reification fallacy.
What's gravity again?
A reification fallacy?
Well, they had pseudoscientific evidence of gravity until we pinned them to it, to the meaning of what real science and scientific method was. Now, they are saying science doesn't prove things. So again, another lie leads to another big change in the way they want to describe what science was. Before it was their friend, now it doesn't prove things.
The Theorypothesis made another video titled "Gravity is not a force."
Join the club. The list is getting longer.
Actually, watch it. He gave quite a lot of what should we call it? Just so stories about ether. Nevertheless, he did pull apart gravity in a reasonably good way, I thought. Kind of hinted that he knew gravity was a thing. And look, gravity is a thing, but it's not a force, and this is why. But it is kind of a thing, and then he doesn't give any explanation for why it is or what it is, but then details again how it isn't what they claim it is. You know, it's not mass attracting mass, it's not bending space-time, time isn't real, time's a concept, etc., etc. He's pulling it all apart. So, yeah, shout out to a Theorypothesis. Don't necessarily agree with his ether nonsense, but nevertheless, he knows gravity's not a force, which it isn't. And he's more than happy to talk about it.
Well, it has to be a thing, Nathan, because they're saying on these multiple discal mirror planes on the Earth, it's where it's keeping the ocean's water to the ball as it's spinning and curving it. So how could it be doing all those things if it's not a thing?
Because you can think of it as a thing.
Good one,
Well,
Arwen.
I had one of the Globers over Discord since we've been off. I think since you've been off, Nathan was saying that basically everything's an effect, and an effect can create a cause or something along those lines. So there really is no causes; it's all just effects. That's what they're. I think that's pretty much what they're saying now.
Oh, bless the little pseudoscience defenders.
Well, it's technically a description of a process that is then being reified into this formula that sort of correlates, but not completely, only from a Newtonian mechanic perspective. So, yeah, it is just something that's out there that can be generalized as gravity, but it's not a singular thing, really. It's an aberration. It's just highly suggestive of being a singular thing.
It's kind of funny. Where was it? Newtonian principles break down in Einsteinian at Einsteinian levels with light speed and large bodies, but it all breaks down in quantum mechanics. Isn't that interesting?
What, the new hotness?
Yeah, the new hotness is quantum mechanics.
Love that people are using that. I love it.
Well, there's now the old and busted. That'd be Newton. And then just the old and busted, which is Einsteinian, pseudo-Riemannian force space. And then you've got the new hotness, quantum mechanics. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Nope.
Nope. There's
That's a negative.
You can't get that there.
Hello, Righteous. Hello, Nathan. Yeah, it's good to have you. Good to be back. Yeah, good to see you. Good to see you.
Hey Nathan, good to have you back.
Hey, Righteous.
Wow, so cheery this morning.
You okay? Everything pucker?
Oh, everything's great.
Excellent. Where were we? Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
It's
No.
so hot, it has to be there.
It's so hot. What, out here in the open air?
Well, they say that it loses its heat, right? Well, I feel a lot of heat, so
I think Arwen's just laying off.
yeah,
his steam.
yeah, I'm just being really lazy in
Fair
my
enough.
reasoning here.
Are you saying there's a direct correlation between the heat you're feeling and a molten iron core 4,000 miles under your feet?
Well, only based on what the geologists say happens over time, that it does lose its heat. Well, where is it going to lose it at? Well, to the surface. So, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the sun.
Someone yesterday on 24/7 said it too. They were like, "Oh yeah, PNS waves,"
Oh God, I still don't know what they are, but
and then he
Don't
showed
need
us
to.
a diagram.
Can somebody
It
explain
works
that to
better
me?
if you don't know what they are. Just stay right where you're at.
When it was said chocolate, was it said how you said it just now? Someone just blurted out, yeah, P waves and S waves, full stop.
Basically, yeah. Except it came with like a little diagram with a presupposed sphere and like lines over it, waves and stuff. So it came with a diagram, but yeah, it was basically PNS waves.
Oh, it wouldn't-
That's how we know.
It wouldn't be a perfect globehead example if it didn't come with a cartoon of how they beg the question.
Exactly.
That could be somebody's old EKG reading. You really got to check out those waves.
Yeah, EKG. No,
reading?
something very different.
EKG is electrocardiogram.
Yeah, we're talking
Oh,
about
right.
P
They
waves and S
claim
waves.
something
like about Ghostbuster detectors or something.
No,
like
well, that's what they do. They put a chart up with these waves and these numbers on grids, and they show these squiggly lines and say, yeah, PNS waves right there.
The proton
Yeah,
packs
that's
are
an
far
EKG.
more reliable than P waves and S waves.
And if gravity was a thing, they would be able to make one of those little EKG meters, like they call it in Ghostbusters. And you could just walk around and look at all the gravity here.
that. Yeah, gravometer.
Gravimeter, yeah, there you go.
There's a new word called planisphere.
Planisphere?
Thanks to Dallas Dave, the retard.
Yeah, I heard you
Double
on
D.
24/7 today.
Double D's back on the scene.
Every time I hear him talking,
Asserting
he's
that-
just... I told him off once, and afterwards I felt very guilty. But looking back on it, he just comes up with total nonsense. He's still claiming that as you raise in altitude, the variation in heat is what's going to cause your gas pressure. It's like, oh, God.
Yeah, temperature's a force.
Temperature's a force, right?
What?
It must be. It's got Arwen sweating.
Yeah. Did you catch my my post? What Nick said? I know Nick's a nobody, but he said that Boyle's law does not apply to the universe
I did,
or
Alan, I
the
did.
Earth.
I did see
How
you
about that?
mention that, yes.
And he
Boyle's law
doubled
doesn't
down on
apply.
it immediately.
Well, it doesn't apply because they've got a fundamentalist sphere Earth belief that doesn't have containment. So if you have any laws, like Boyle's law, which is intrinsically involving containers, then they're going to say it doesn't apply. Well, no, it just doesn't apply to your model of Earth.
Yeah.
So instead of proving their claims, what they're going to do now is just discard all the laws that exist. Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're
Just
breaking
claim
the
they-
law.
Just claim they don't apply to the Earth. And by that, what they mean is their reified version of a sphere Earth in a vacuum hasn't got any natural laws applied to it. You might as well say, our world can't be real. But that's what they say.
Very few of the natural laws apply to the actual real world we have here compared to the globe, hey?
No, all natural laws apply, or there wouldn't be laws. There wouldn't
Exactly.
be laws anymore.
Except Boyle's law, because it doesn't apply to the Earth or the outer universe. You know, that makes it even worse than entropy, because that only doesn't apply to the Earth. Apparently.
Yeah, it does.
According to M. Scott Veach, gravity is the container. That's all that's needed.
Last time it was force equals container, didn't it? With M. Scott Veach.
Oh, God. Really?
Yeah, force equals
He did
WC, walls of container.
Yeah.
Hey, if gravity is the container, how come there's so many unboxing YouTube videos?
Don't need a container to ship things on Amazon.
And the other thing is the
The container law doesn't apply to
says-
international shipping.
Oh,
What I heard
gosh.
was if you haven't read Cavendish's entire paper, then nobody should speak on it.
All right.
What? I'd have to read all of it?
That's what they said.
It's just a bunch of reified mathematical nonsense. Like, what's it
Just
supposed to
telling you
do
what they were
anyway?
saying.
Weigh the Earth through calculation. That's already a contradiction in terms.
But that's not
Weighing
gonna-
is a physical action. Calculation is not a physical action.
Good point.
That's what the paper says. What's the claim being made? That we have mass attracting mass, and in scientific terminology, their formulated hypothesis has the cause and effect the same. If mass, then mass attracts mass. It's absolutely preposterous when you consider that you can't define mass. They use an equivocation. They'll describe it as both inertia and mole. Yeah, it's a cluster.
So a logical fallacy is better than nothing.
Tim Osmond.
Really? Is it?
That's what Tim Osmond says. Look, if you can't prove your worldview, begging the question's better than nothing.
That's the other thing Dallas Dave said. Mass does attract mass. If you throw a rock up, it comes back down because Earth is the greater mass.
All right, and if I throw a helium balloon up, it'll come back down, will it?
No, it keeps going and going and going.
You move on. Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container?
Absolutely
Um,
not.
So after the balloon pops, when it goes all the way up, it's accelerated up, and then it pops. Where does that gas go? Does it fall down and go boom, boom?
Yes.
It's party time at the Carmen line.
Because the rubber was
I think it
holding
might
it
just
up.
disperse, yeah?
Yeah, it disperses. Fills the availability of volume it has to fill. Occupies all available microstates.
That'd be gas law.
Right. But that doesn't apply to the globe Earth, because globe Earth is a violation of things that are natural, because they have a vacuum for a sky. Obviously, we don't.
This is
really
what I
have that.
mean. The natural laws are very different to what they are on the Earth we have in front of us, are they not?
Oh, that's what you meant with your last comment. Yes, precisely. Yeah, the natural laws that we experience in nature, they're not the same as the laws in a globe Earth, because that's just a reification fallacy. So those laws don't need to apply to a reified model, because we don't live on it.
Well, if
Earth's
they don't
flat.
match the globe, then they can't be, surely, because it is a globe, as is already assumed.
Oh, well, like I say, if you haven't got an argument, begging the question's better than nothing.
I actually had a
mean-
little question for your boys after housekeeping, if that's all right.
I think we're done, aren't we? I think that was the last housekeeping question. Any evidence of the R value, Earth radius?
No evidence. Go ahead.
Feel free, my friend.
Nice. Thank you very much. So I've been having it out with an old friend who's obviously a globie. I've been on the flat earth for about a year. You boys sort of convinced me between episodes 600 and 900, so nice one for that, like big respect. But so I've been looking into the Earth curve calculator, and I used to do a lot of my approximations on 8 inches per mile square. Though I've over the past few months realized that doesn't conform to a full globe. Am I correct in saying that?
Close enough over the first quarter of a globe, according to their begging the question fallacy model. But no, it's not 100% accurate. You're right.
So over 1,000 miles, I've calculated there's about 2 miles differentiation from where it should be to where the globe says it is.
Yeah, at that distance, it's exponentially going to get worse as well. But you've only got to ask a couple of globe heads, and they'll say 8 inches per mile squared is correct.
I agree. Well, I've been having it out with an old friend who's got lots of different contradictory maths coming. And I just wanted to ask, is it accurate over 10 miles?
According to them, yes. No, because you'd have to turn your world side on and see your own head in the mathematics that they apply for this to apply. But yes, according to them, it's accurate at 10 miles.
That's what I've made the mistake of doing. I've bit the hook I have, and I've been swamped in by the globe mathematics, which I know don't make any sense and don't take into angular differentiation over distance and whatnot. But it is roughly that if we're 10 miles away and we're both 6 foot up, the law of where the geometric horizon has to be would still block the view from the other person, would it not?
According to their geometry, yes.
Excellent. Nice one, boys. Big respect. This is all I really wanted to know.
That's it.
Well, there's got to be that hump in the middle, right? If it's a curved arc and you're on one side and you're on the ball and your buddy's on the other side miles away, based on their geometry, their radius, 8 inches per mile square, you're not going to be able to see them because of that hump or the curve.
Yeah, of course, unless they claim that a holographic superlume projection is actually real, of course.
That'd be based on R, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, exactly, which is unproven. I just wanted to make sure, boys, because I was looking at some of the maths and one of my friends called me out that it wasn't exact, and I did realize it wasn't exact. I got that from Wakey, and I've since looked at the trig, which Wakey's given me, and I've, it is a little bit different, but it's still very verifiable that over 10 miles, the obstruction of the hump to the curve would geometrically create a horizon between two viewer points.
Yeah, at these small distances, you're not going to get any wiggle room beyond the 8 inches per mile squared. But because it's a squared function, as soon as you go beyond, say, you looked at it at 1,000 miles, you can see how squarely it gets at those greater distances. But no, up to, say, I don't know, to be very, very accurate according to their reification fallacy, you could say 100 miles. It wouldn't give you any wiggle room if you used, half a decimal point here or there. Either way, it's not going to make any difference at those short distances.
Mm. I mean, what I said is that it wouldn't make a difference if it was only an inch of curvature over the whole thing, because then these technically couldn't be on the same level. I'm just a bit swamped in with globe head thinking is all, which is why I'm asking such basic questions.
Not basic at all. It's convoluted.
Refraction argument.
Go on, 10th.
Yeah, the refraction argument is dead too, and this is their own numbers, not ours, because we don't believe any of what they say anyway. But the refraction argument is somehow applied to Al-Biruni, because all he did was see a refracted horizon, right? The apparent horizon. He didn't see a geometric horizon. And they said, well, even though he didn't see the geometric horizon, which is what he's claimed to have seen, he came within 5% of it. So even with their refraction and their 5%, you're still not going to have superlumin, because Andrew Thomas Young says the refraction is 1.22 and 1.32 miles compared to 1.22 to the geometric horizon. So that would put it out, instead of 1.22 miles, it would be 3.47 miles out in the Black Swan picture. So that's still well in front of the first oil platform. So no matter which way they go, refraction, superlumin, it doesn't work.
And also lots of lasers which have been connected to mirrors and so on and so forth couldn't actually meet each other over such a long distance, could they not? Because even if you count refraction, what you're technically receiving is a hologram, which may be relevant to a laser, but to a ballistic missile is absolutely not. The ballistic missile would hit the target, whatever they say about refraction.
Right, line of sight.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Dr. John D is about to do a video. I'm not going to expose too much because I'll ruin the surprise. But there's a certain aspect of line of sight which he's going to be covering in his most recent video, which it's not linked to the black swan, although it is, because it's directly in regards to the physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curve, and what that gives you and does not give you in terms of line of sight. Now, I've got to be honest, when he explained this to me, I was like, no, I don't like it. And I started arguing against it because he's also put the position that the globe side of the argument might come back with. Again, hopefully I'm not putting any spoilers in this. But when he put it across, it was so good, I started arguing with him. Because his sort of attempt at going, well, this is how you could rebut it if you were a glober, once I've pointed out this aspect of line of sight, which may or may not be acquired without putting any spoilers out. But I even said to him, I said, I bet you anything a glober will pick up your attempt to show how you could refute it, but obviously it wouldn't stack up with the images. Someone will use that. And he was like, no, they won't. I'm giving it for the flat earthers, so they understand that if someone was to try and refute this is what they'd have to say. I'm like, yeah, but someone from the globe side will actually say it. You watch, mark my words, I bet you £1, they'll say it. And he's like, no, because I've debunked it. You've only got to show a picture. Anyway, I'm giving out information without giving out the actual information, so this is kind of seeming nonsensical. I'll shut up. But Dr. John D, you need to watch this space. I'll mirror the video if you'll allow me.
Nice one, I'll check that out.
It's coming out soon. It's going to be out in the
amazing.
next few days. I think he's got Paul on the plane narrating it for him.
Well, it really is the art of double think, isn't it? That really everything that can be said about the globe, even though it contradicts other information that lots of globers give, is said really to create this mad, disparate swarm and swabble of information, which is very hard to decipher through, and it all constitutes a very complex mathematics, which aren't actually tangible in the real world.
Correct. Spot
It's
on.
all filler.
Coriolis is the perfect example. Earth needs Coriolis effect to prove its spinning. The apparent deflection observed from the ground, which is Coriolis effect, from the ground being a claim to be spinning ground with stuff that leaves it drifting away from you, or seeming to because you're claimed to be spinning underneath it. That's Coriolis claim on a globe Earth that spins. Now, when you get into argument about how you don't see that effect, you'll have a load of mathematics thrown in your face about conservation of momentum, angular or linear, and they'll explain how Earth is assumed to be spinning, and atmosphere is assumed to be spinning with it, and anything that leaves is assumed to follow along with the spin of the Earth. Not Coriolis effect. In other words, the doublespeak is that they assert, in their rhetoric, we've got Coriolis effect on Earth. Coriolis effect is something you can observe from a roundabout. If you throw something off it, it'll look like it curves away from you, when in reality, you're spinning underneath something that's travelling in a straight line. That's Coriolis effect. Well, Earth's claimed to have that effect, but when you point out it hasn't, nothing's drifting away from you. Drones don't drift away at 15 degrees an hour, as is claimed. Planes aren't having Earth turn underneath them 15 degrees an hour, shortening their flight times, as is claimed, to prove Earth spins. When you point that out, they start talking about a completely different subject that isn't Coriolis, conservation of momentum, and just beg the question. Just assume Earth's spinning with their example. Well, Earth's spinning in the example, and the atmosphere's spinning with it. Well, that's not Coriolis effect. Who cares? Let's argue about this while I beg the question that Earth's spinning and defy the claim that we've got proof of it in the form of Coriolis. So they'll literally, as you put it, double speak their way around the fact they haven't got a claim proof of Earth spinning in Coriolis by saying, we haven't got it. It's all tracking together.
I find it so funny because they actually back up our claim to back their claim up. We point out they have no correlations, and then they give us some reason why we can't observe the correlations we're meant to be seeing. Like it backs up their point of correlations.
Coriolis.
Yeah, it's not
Coriolis. Sorry.
Close enough.
Coriolis.
Coriolis is it's the
stop
it's
it.
the
Everyone
disease
stop it.
that makes
I wish I
you
hadn't done
think that correlation is as good as causation. That's Coriolis.
well dragged back. The bottom line is you're correct. They're supposed to have it. They don't. So they argue for why they haven't got it or shouldn't have it. It's like, well, you're supposed to be arguing for having Coriolis effect on a claim to be spinning Earth, and all you're doing is defending why we don't see that effect, why we don't see planes with different flight times, why we don't see them taking a curved trajectory, why drones don't drift away from us at 15 degrees an hour, and justify that with an assumption that Earth's spinning automatically, because then you've obviously got the claim Earth's spinning in the argument, which is all they really need to beg the question. But the claim is Coriolis deviation, and we don't have it.
To back their claim up even further.
Even further, what? Sorry.
It's in to go further to explain why we don't have it. They say that somehow proves the Earth spin with a lot of globes out there. The fact they don't have it, and they say that the reason that they give that they don't have this phenomenon is because X, Y, and Z, and they act like that backs up the spin of the Earth. When of course it does the opposite and supports our argument. That is that it doesn't spin anywhere and there's no deviation.
Yeah, exactly. I had Time and Dan send me a video clip of a trampolinist being dragged along by a tractor. And he's just bouncing up and down even though the tractor's being dragged along. His point being, look, no drift. Oh, so we're not experiencing, or like the trampoline, Earth isn't demonstrating 15 degrees an hour deviation then. Like the trampoliner, he's not drifting. He's going straight back to the trampoline and bouncing up and down again, even though it's being dragged along. So they're claiming no 15 degrees an hour drift. These morons that come here and argue for conservation of momentum. They're arguing against having the 15 degrees an hour deviation that's supposed to be proving it spins. So what? The trampoline guy hasn't got the tractor drifting away underneath as he bounces in the air? So not analogous to a 15 degree an hour drift proving we spin? It's not drifting, you morons? You need that to prove it spins. That's Coriolis deviation. 15 degrees an hour? All you commenters that come underneath my videos saying, Bob proved Earth spins 15 degrees an hour. Yeah, that's 15 degrees an hour of Earth rotating underneath stuff like drones, helicopters, bullets, footballs, aeroplanes. But if it's turning underneath an aeroplane, it shortens the flight time when going west. And if it's turning under a drone, you watch your drone drift away from you at 15 degrees an hour. That doesn't happen. So what do? Tell you that the Earth and atmosphere are going along together. No, they're not. We've got multiple direction surface winds. That's absolutely absurd. But it's a way of begging the question that we're spinning. I assume we're spinning, and I assume the atmosphere's spinning too. In defiance of the claim proof that we've got an Earth that spins with Coriolis deviation, which we haven't got.
Nicely put. Do you mind if I ask one more question about I don't dare say it now, you've corrected me, but about the C word.
That's okay, go ahead.
So basically, obviously you boys have been doing this for a long time. I've got a few old friends. I'm trying to get them on the flat Earth. You can imagine the pain and trauma going on with that. But I've just they're all telling me that snipers don't claim that the Coriolis effect is. But I'm certain I've heard Quantum in a past number video that I've not heard that they actually use it in the military manual of American snipers, even though it's never tangibly used in the physical world of sniping. I just wondered if you boys, any of you knew that, if it is actually putting in the manuscript of their scriptures.
That's correct. And when I've heard it put to Quantum Eraser, I've not worked in the military, I don't know. But according to him, his response to that was, ask anybody who's actually in service when they last looked at the field manual, and the answer will be never. Because they go out and they do it practically. They just go out and learn how to do it as opposed to look it up in a manual. Now, that doesn't change the fact that it might be there in the manual, but I would ultimately use that claim. And I use typically the pendulum because it's the most simple to conceptualize. But if you want to use the bullet, it's the same. Okay, just accept it at face value. Mr. Globehead says, bullet is fired and Earth rotates underneath at 15 degrees an hour. That means the guy firing the bullet needs to account for the fact that Earth rotates underneath the bullet at 15 degrees an hour. Meaning he's got to compensate for it, right? That's their claim. So if you accept at face value, for the sake of argument, whatever, that Earth rotated underneath the bullet at 15 degrees an hour, then Earth rotates under a drone and a helicopter and a hot air balloon and an aeroplane at 15 degrees an hour also. Once the plane leaves the tarmac, like the bullet leaves the barrel, it's got Earth turning under it at 15 degrees an hour? Well, that would shorten the flight time when it's travelling west. Exampled by Charlotte, North Carolina to Los Angeles. 4.5 hour actual flight time would take an hour and a half if Earth was turning underneath about 800 miles an hour at that particular latitude. Well, it doesn't shorten the flight times. So if you want to accept at face value that snipers are accounting for 15 degrees an hour deviation as Earth rotates under a bullet, then it's also got to rotate underneath everything else at 15 degrees an hour, precisely as is claimed. And when they say, no, the engines... No, that's not Coriolis effect anymore. So suddenly when it's something that's not a bullet, as per your example, something with a longer hang time, like a drone, suddenly we don't have the effect. Earth and atmosphere travelling as one. Well, wouldn't that stop the bullet deviating, with you begging the question that Earth spins with atmosphere travelling with it, even though we've got multiple directions of surface winds, annihilating that claim? But ultimately, if they are assumed to be travelling as one, you wouldn't get the deflection in the bullet for him to have to account for. So it's a cluster screw. But if you want to use it, use it that the Earth's turning underneath at 15 degrees an hour and point out that doesn't happen to a drone or plane.
You could also just ask for someone to aim with a sniper to aim for A and hit B, which is equally ludicrous, really.
Yeah, that's a nice tie-in. Everything they're looking at on the globe Earth is a hologram anyway. Everything's affected by refraction. Everything's bending at standard rates around a spherical surface. Nothing's lining up straight. That's what demolishes their geometry. Essentially, nothing's where it's supposed to be on a globe. Everything's affected by bent light. Therefore, you've got no tangent points anymore for your geometry. This is why Alberuni's getting a proper pasting. Oh, right, everything's bending into my light around curves, is it? Standard. Where'd you get a straight line tangent from, then? How'd you derive your geometry? How do you assert that you've got a straight line to a physical obstruction of things in the distance? You can't. Bye-bye, globe Earth. The model's untenable.
But they've just done the 0 foot across sea level, really, aren't they? Because level, by definition, and altitude, by definition, cannot be matched across even 100 to 1,000 miles apart on any ocean there is, or canal or river system.
Yeah, it's back to that straight line that you would need. A line of sight. We mentioned this earlier. I'll button my mouth because I'm going to ruin Dr. John D's video. I'll shut up. Shout out to Good Servant. Thank you very much for the smiley emoji with the googly eyes.
Nathan, have you seen Brandon Toy's of his last few videos on the Coriolis topic and airplanes?
I have not. I've been recommended a lot of Simon Dan and Professor Dave and Becky videos, but surprisingly, the single thing I would be interested in seeing, and I'm subscribed to, no, I've not. Shocker.
I would check it out when you get a chance. It's really good. It's one of the best videos on the topic. So obviously he takes all of the arguments that you and John and others make on this show and other shows like this, and he condenses it into a video. He explains very, very clearly, the concept of an airplane flying over what would be a spinning ball and the consequences of flying over what would be a spinning ball. And he just asks a couple questions about, how this would work and why don't we see these impacts on airplanes, etc. So I'll leave it at that. I can go into more detail if you want, but I'll leave it there for your viewing pleasure.
We'll have to check it out. Big shout out to Retro Bill. He says, woohoo! Flat Earth debate is back. It's easier to be separated from my wife for 4 days than it is without the show. Sorry, dear.
I'm actually in a debate right now.
Still reruns, though.
Go on, Chris.
I was just going to say I'm in a debate. I posted on one of Brandon's videos, and Wolfie posted, and then I posted a reply to Wolfie. So I'm in about a 4 to 5 message deep back and forth with Wolfie on why airplanes don't experience Coriolis and why that is. And he's just giving me the classic 5-year-old ball answers.
Sounds like he doesn't even know what Coriolis is.
Let me guess, the 5-year-old baller answer is to assume Earth's spinning, assume atmosphere travels along and everything tracks with it in defiance of Coriolis. Am I correct?
Yes. Because I've asked, so one of the questions that I've been posing lately to all these people is if let's just grant that somehow magically, right, the atmosphere keeps airplanes and drones and helicopters in a near perfect lockstep 1-to-1, which is what they tell us, right? I mean, like how else would it work? To say move a hovering helicopter along with the Earth at the same time. So let's say it's in lockstep 1-to-1. The problem with that theory, well, there's many problems. One of the big problems that I've discovered is the air density at different altitudes, right? They love to push us and say, all right, why is there a gradient? Blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm using that gradient against them and saying, if there's a gradient, okay, I agree there is. If the gradient is, so let's say at 15, I did the calculation, at 15,000 feet, air density is 4 times greater than at 40,000 feet. So if you have an airplane flying north, due north from the equator at 15,000 feet, and one flying due north from the equator at 40,000 feet, the effects of that supposed lockstep air is going to be 75% less on the airplane at 40,000 feet, because simply due to the air density, right? Because there's less air molecules supposedly pressing against the plane. Therefore, the higher plane must take a different flight path.
Yeah, spot on. In their paradigm. But it's also a first law of thermodynamics violation, you realise.
How so?
Okay, if you imagine, 24,900 miles circumference. If you take off, yeah, and get higher on that ball, your effective circumference is increased, correct?
Correct.
That would mean that to track with the speed of the ball that's below you, you'd have to take an increased speed to track with the ground below you. As you go higher, the effective circumference that you track gets bigger and bigger and bigger, meaning that you would have to input more energy into the item tracking with the claimed tracking item below. So it's actually a first law of thermodynamics violation for it to be capable of hovering, because you go up off the ground and you've got to increase velocity to track with the ground that's tracking below you. It's also absurd on the basis that gas, number one, we've already covered, you've got multiple directions of surface winds. No, it's not tracking along with Earth. Number two, gas is unbonded. So, what? Bonded to Earth? Travelling along because it's velcroed to the Earth? That's not how gas behaves. Gas is fundamentally unbonded. So it's not tracking with anything. It's unbonded. Last but by no means least, Chris. If, in your example, what I've forgotten the projectile in your example, what was it you were discussing in your comments? What was the item that's being viewed?
Sorry, which part? Airplane flying at different altitudes?
Aeroplanes, sorry. So, in terms of this example that you're arguing about, the actual claim is Coriolis effect. And the claim of Coriolis effect is you on the ground, observing the plane, seem to drift. But what you're arguing about is the projectile and what it does, regardless of anybody watching it seem to drift or not. And Coriolis, any Coriolis argument is very tied specifically to the observation from a spinning reference frame. So you've got to see something drift because you're spinning on a roundabout. Yeah? Now that drift could be a lamppost in the ground, you're just spinning underneath it and it looks like it's curving away from you and then coming back again as you spin underneath it. Well, that is the observation of Coriolis. If I start detailing what the lamppost is doing in terms of its velocity, things concreted into the ground, remember, it's got nothing to do with Coriolis effect, because Coriolis effect is merely the observation on a spinning platform. So the moment you start arguing for things that are travelling together spinning, well then that's not an observation of something not spinning with you spinning, observing it. That's Coriolis. So as soon as they say, well, the plane's retaining velocity, oh, that's fascinating. And from the ground, I'll see it seem to drift, right? Because I'm spinning underneath it, right? That's Coriolis. No, it's retaining velocity. I don't care what it's doing in the air. Coriolis is purely me observing it, and what I see in that observation is going to be apparent deflection at 15 degrees an hour, because I'm spinning underneath it at 15 degrees an hour. But Coriolis is definitely just me observing it. Not what the plane's doing. Retaining velocity, who cares? I'm watching it seem to drift. Watching it. Watching the plane. But the Coriolis is the bit where I'm viewing it. Not the plane, it could be doing loop-de-loops. As long as I'm sat rotating underneath it and going, that plane doing loop-de-loops seems to be drifting away from me while it's doing loop-de-loops at 15 degrees an hour as I observe it to get Coriolis effect. So, yeah, unless it's an observation, it ain't Coriolis effect. If it's what the plane's doing or the bullet's doing, well, who cares what the bullet's doing? It's what you observe of the bullet as you spin underneath it.
I have a question.
Go.
Coriolis is an observation, you say?
Yeah, only ever an observation.
So, can a projectile make an observation?
No. Anything that's happening in the inertial reference frame isn't you observing it from the non-inertial claim to be spinning reference frame in the case of Earth, or a roundabout in the case of actual Coriolis. The Coriolis bit isn't the ball and what it does for retaining velocity, shedding velocity, increasing speed, decreasing speed. No, nothing to do with you observing it seem to drift. When it's not really drifting. It's the you observing the not actual drift. That's Coriolis. But it's definitely just you observing it. Not what the ball does. What you observe the ball seem to do. Because you're turning underneath at 15 degrees an hour if the roundabout's moving at 15 degrees an hour. And that's coincidentally what they claim Earth is doing. We just don't see anything ever drift. Because we're never turning underneath anything at 15 degrees an hour.
It's absurd. It is. I mean, like you said earlier, Nathan, so I'm just really repeating what you said, but it's a very good point, and that's to argue that the Earth is spinning and moving, they have to argue that it appears as if it's stationary and as if it works as if it's stationary, that the atmosphere magically pushes things along even though there's an atmospheric gradient, which would have different pressures at different altitudes. That's why planes fly high, right? Like, why do planes fly high? The fundamental question, the reason is because there's less drag. There's less force on the airplane. It's common sense. So to say that the atmosphere somehow pushes the same airplane, same distance at the same time at 40,000 feet as it does at 10 or 15,000 feet is absurd. It physically wouldn't work. It's a physical debunk of their claim that the atmosphere is the cause for why we don't see deviation.
But we're supposed to see deviation. That's the bit that's supposed to be proving Earth spinning. We just end up, as we started this show out, talking about exactly that. With a claim that we've got a proof Earth spinning at 15 degrees an hour underneath of the stuff. That's the claim. But then you get into an argument about why we don't see deviation, which is the argument you're in. You're arguing about why we don't see the things claimed to be proving it's spinning. They just assume it's spinning. Well, I assume it's spinning, and Earth's spinning with the atmosphere, and that moves everything along like the plane, so we don't see 15 degrees an hour drift. What? Don't see 15 degrees an hour? What? Isn't that the bit that you're supposed to be proving? Hello?
Nathan, if you wanna read something funny, I found a funny article. I took a snippet out of a funny article I found speaking about how the higher you get, how the atmosphere is rotating with the Earth. It's in Ballbusters if you want to show it real quick.
It's on screen for the audience if you want to read it out.
Yeah. It's bound to the Earth by gravity. Most of the atmosphere spins along with it as a result of friction with the ground and viscosity or stickiness of the different layers of air above it. Above 200 kilometers, however, the incredibly thin atmosphere actually spins faster than the Earth. The cause of this bizarre super rotation effect remains unclear, but has also been detected on Venus.
So that's where I said that's the first law of thermodynamics violation. So essentially, the velocity of these winds, which travel in all directions but are here claimed to rotate at the speed of Earth, yeah, those winds would have to increase velocity, gain energy. No. The first law of thermodynamics violation, I'm afraid. No, that's not happening. But that's what they need because their spinning bullshit Earth doesn't work. It's total nonsense. We don't see what they'd need, which is Coriolis effect. So that's their ultimate claim. We have Coriolis effect because we're spinning. So we're going to see things drift at 15 degrees an hour. Will we? Well, what about this plane? No. The reason we don't see 15 degrees an hour deviation in a plane... What do you mean, if the reason we don't? You've just claimed that's what proves we spin. That's what the argument essentially is made up of.
That's all of their arguments. That's the curvature argument. That's the motion argument. It's all their arguments. They argue for things that are supposed to be there, but they tell us why we don't see these things that are supposed to be there.
That's because, chocolate, that's because they argue for a sphere model. And they're arguing while on a obviously observable, motionless, flat plane. So they're living on a flat plane, not counting hills and valleys, and it's motionless, but their model is not flat, it's a sphere, and it's got motion. Since they can't observe it, they can't feel it, they can't see it, they argue for a model. That's why it's reification. It's not even real. It's all made up. These people need to wake up.
Can't see it, they can't feel it, but they can assume it. So when you can't demonstrate in physical reality a 15 degrees an hour deviation of the Earth rotating underneath because it's spinning, the answer to that is to just assume it's spinning. I assume Earth spinning. And I assume atmosphere's travelling with Earth velcroed to it because it's sticky. Sticky, implying it's sticking. No, gas is unbonded, not stuck, not sticking to anything. You don't have to wipe your walls to get the gas off them. It's not sticking to anything, it's not sticking to itself, it's unbonded. But they have to tell themselves, in violation of the actual behaviour of gas, that the stuff's velcroed to the Earth that spins because they've assumed it spins. Why have they had to assume it spins? Because they couldn't prove it. If it was spinning, you'd have 15 degrees an hour deviation. And you don't.
What about the star rotation nonsense? There was this guy in Discord claiming that the star rotations in the north and south prove that it only works on a sphere and not a flat Earth.
Okay, well, how does it work on a sphere according to them? So when someone says that, a bit like P waves and S waves, how does star rotation prove we're on a spinning Earth? And just wait for them to affirm the consequent.
Did you hear how he got destroyed with that? All you had to ask him was, what direction do the stars, the sun, the moon, what direction do they all spin? And he agreed it was east to west. Well, there you go. I don't see how this is even an argument.
Yeah, that guy's annoying, though. But it was cutting in and out, so I couldn't catch everything.
They use it by affirming the consequence. So I'll explain what they will use if you were to push them into actually formulating it into an argument rather than just doing what they usually do, which is blurting out, star rotation proves we're on a sphere. Okay, what does it actually entail when you claim it as proof? Well, they would tell you that if the Earth is a sphere, that's begging the question, then I will observe north and south, hemispherical, begging the question, star rotation. I do assume that I'm travelling to the bottom of a sphere when I make this observation. Therefore, the Earth's a sphere. So it's an affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy. If P, then Q, Q, therefore P. The fallacy part of it is that one doesn't necessarily follow the other. If I eat 10 hamburgers, I will be full. If P, 10 hamburgers, I will be full, Q. Q, I am full. Therefore, P, I just ate 10 hamburgers. Well, not necessarily. I could have eaten or drank lots of beer. That's why I'm full. So it doesn't necessarily follow that if the Earth is a sphere, then that's your P statement, also begging the question. Then Q, I'll observe star rotation in the northern and southern hemisphere. So part of their statement will include their outcome. That's begging the question. So assume that you're travelling antipodal when you make this observation. Because I assume I'm travelling to the bottom of a sphere and I see lights in the sky doing whatever I describe them to do, then that confirms that I travel to the bottom of a sphere when I said I travel to the bottom of a sphere. And how do you know that they're assuming that? Because they use the word hemisphere. So it's just an affirming the consequent. If P, then Q. Q, therefore P. When the following statement, the I am full, doesn't necessarily follow with the preceding statement that you've eaten 10 hamburgers, or that in their case you've begged the question Earth's a sphere. Therefore, if I see green grass, then Earth's a sphere. It's just an affirming the consequent. Shout out to Retro Bill.
Then he said,
Hold on one second.
he said on Flat Earth, you would see all the stars at the same time.
Yeah, I did pick up on that. I was going to branch into the fact that you also had a false dichotomy as part of this shit sandwich, but I just thought I'd address the affirming the consequent rather than the double your trouble. I'm going to present it as a false dichotomy with a globe versus a flat Earth model for you to pick one that's going to be the winner and which works better. Me assuming that I'm travelling antipodal, or a flat plane where you've got it mapped out with, I don't know, a dome or something. Anyway, I'm just going to shout out Retro Bill. Chocolate, that super rotation nonsense was absolutely freaking priceless. Thank you very much for the super chat, Retro Bill. It was. I was chuckling along. I also like the little hand scrawls of lol, smiley face. And then a nice thick line with a triple arrow under super rotation. AKA,
oh yeah, that's why when I read that, I had to keep it.
AKA first law of thermodynamics violation.
Yeah, I'd like to say something too about the star rotation. If there is no radius, and a black swan seems to indicate that, then whatever goes on the sky will work on a flat Earth if there's no radius. So just saying.
Yeah, you don't need to beg the question. You don't need to assume the antipodal travel bit. That's just, like you say, Paul, that's just the assuming of a radius. I assume a spherical radius, and therefore when I travel south, I am antipodal when I arrive. Sorry, why did you assume that? Well, because I automatically beg the question that I'm on a sphere. Obviously, we're on a sphere! No, that's just you telling me that you've begged the question and justifying it by getting angry. Because we all know we're on a sphere, apparently. So it's okay for them to beg the question.
Well, and then I brought that up the other day on Discord, and somebody brought up, well, why don't you model that on a flat Earth? I was like, we ain't learned about models in this world. We're about the real world. So I just dropped it from there.
Models are pseudoscience. And with that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you, first and foremost, to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. A massive, huge, enormous thank you to all of you tuned in live. But this is where the show ends, unfortunately. Thanks for smashing the super chat. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!